Before 2020, India's labor regulations were a sprawling, overlapping mess. Decades of separate laws piled up, creating an administrative burden that hindered compliance and left gaps in worker protection. The old framework relied on strict silos. If you operated a manufacturing plant, you followed the Factories Act of 1948, a law built exclusively for industrial assembly lines. But if you moved goods through a major port, you dealt with separate, parallel legislation designed specifically for maritime and dock workers. For a company operating factories, warehouses, and transport fleets simultaneously, this meant juggling multiple, contradictory legal standards. Tracking different definitions of working hours and safety thresholds became a heavy logistical burden. Consolidating this fragmented web established a single, standardized, and enforceable baseline for occupational safety across the Indian economy. The OSH Code rationalizes these historical laws into one comprehensive piece of legislation. But before an employer examines a single safety protocol or duty requirement, they must pass through Chapter 1. This preliminary chapter acts as the legal gatekeeper for the entire code. We can view Chapter 1 as a compliance decision tree that determines exact legal obligations. This tree relies on three primary branches: identifying when the law takes effect, measuring applicability to an operation, and pinpointing which government authority holds jurisdiction. Skipping these architectural steps leads to misapplied compliance and legal exposure. Chapter 1 dictates every action that follows. A law passing through Parliament and receiving presidential assent is merely the initial legislative step. The date the president signs the act into law does not automatically mean its rules apply the very next day. The actual enforcement relies on a timeline variable. The government activates specific provisions by issuing official notifications. This turns the code into a modular framework. Instead of a set-in national rollout, sections come into force in phases, allowing industries time to adapt. Assuming the enactment date equals the enforcement date causes organizations to miscalculate their operational readiness. Establishments must track these active notifications to know exactly when their legal duties begin. Once a provision is active, an organization must clear the second node, applicability. The OSH Code does not automatically cover every workplace in India. Coverage is determined by measurable metrics: the exact nature of the work being performed, the total headcount of workers on site, and the broader industry category. A manufacturing plant employing 100 people falls within the code's scope, as does a commercial construction firm executing a large-scale infrastructure project. The government retains the power to issue statutory exemptions. In sudden national emergencies or critical infrastructure projects, the state can relax specific compliance procedures. These exemptions only modify administrative paperwork. They do not eliminate the mandate to protect worker safety. Since applicability is a conditional threshold, employers must actively audit operations. A growing business can cross a headcount threshold overnight, instantly triggering the code's jurisdiction. After confirming the code applies, the establishment must legally categorize its specific workers under Chapter 1 definitions. The code defines an adolescent strictly as a worker who has completed 14 years of age but has not yet reached 18. A person 18 or older is classified as an adult. This age distinction triggers different regulatory scales for maximum working hours and allowable employment conditions. The definitions also reflect how the code has adapted to modern employment, extending protections far beyond traditional assembly lines. It specifically protects the audio-visual worker. This brings film crews, lighting technicians, and web series production staff under the statutory safety umbrella of industrial laborers. Accurately classifying personnel ensures that establishments apply the correct, targeted safety standards to protected age groups and modern media production crews, rather than applying generic factory rules. The final required decision involves identifying the appropriate government. This determination dictates exactly where every administrative filing, registration, and compliance document must be sent. The code bifurcates regulatory authority between the central government and the state government. The central government maintains jurisdiction over establishments it directly owns or controls, including specific central public sector undertakings. This covers critical national transport infrastructure, meaning labor administration for the Indian Railways falls under central authority. The same applies to mining operations, oil fields, and coastal logistics hubs. For localized factories, commercial offices, warehouses, and state-level construction projects, the default authority is the respective state government. Submitting compliance paperwork to the misidentified authority invalidates the effort. A license filed with the state when central rules apply is legally void. Identifying the appropriate government enables the establishment to execute its mandatory administrative duties. This is where the actual procedural work happens: filing registrations, securing operational licenses, managing renewals, and submitting mandated accident reports. Often, an owner will authorize a representative, an agent, to manage daily operations and handle compliance filings. Appointing an agent to manage the factory floor does not transfer legal liability. If a safety violation occurs under the agent's watch, the ultimate legal culpability remains permanently anchored to the employer. Operational tasks can be pushed down the chain of command, but the ultimate responsibility for compliance failures rests at the top of the establishment. Navigating Chapter 1 is an exercise in sequential logic. Confirming the timeline of enforcement, measuring applicability metrics, categorizing the workforce, and pinpointing the regulatory authority are mandatory prerequisites before interacting with safety rules. The OSH Code functions as a jurisdictional algorithm, requiring precise legal categorization to ensure lawful operations and worker protection.